Welcome, everybody, to the Sober Life Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Jones, and we're coming to you from the Sober Life Studios. And if you want to catch any of our other shows or see what's going on here and get involved, go to soberlifestudios.com. It'll take us right to take you right to our YouTube channel. And also, don't forget, brought to you by One Brother, One Sister, training first responders to deal with addiction, alcoholism, mental health, trauma, and all of the other problems that they have. Never at any cost to our first responders or our veterans, all done through donations. And if you'd like to make a donation, whether it's $5 or $50, go to onebrotheronesister.com and make a donation today. Every dime you put in there helps us train at least one more first responder. They deserve our help. They've been keeping us safe and dealing with our messes for so long. It's time that we step up and help them a little bit. And speaking of helping people, this is one of the nicest people I've ever met, especially moving down here to Florida, getting involved in the treatment industry. And there were a lot of shady characters and a lot of wannabes and a whole lot of people who were just not real and authentic. But you are one of those authentic people. And this is Tim Roberto. We met years ago, been friends ever since. Yep. Tim, so glad you could come in today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, for having me, man. Boy, what an intro. Thank you so much.
See compared if you can live up to it now.
Compared to where I came from, that's phenomenal.
Speaking of where you came from, I want to talk about all the great work you're doing, but you're from this area and you've done damage in this area and you got sober in this area. You did all that. And now you're so involved in community things, and we're going to talk about that stuff. But how does that feel to walk through communities that at one time you were hiding in the shadows? Does it feel weird to you sometimes, or surreal?
More surreal, like initially, yeah, it kind of probably felt a little weird, but now it's, it really reminds me of how blessed I am. And it's a gift denied so many, it's a privilege denied so many. So when I'm in it, I'm in it.
So just celebrate 18 years.
Yep. April 15th.
Congratulations.
Yep, thank you.
That's fantastic. And you do great things to celebrate. But if I'd met Tim 18 years ago, who would I have met?
A nice guy.
Okay.
I think I've always had that kind soul. I'm not a very aggressive guy or, I've never been that kind of guy, but you probably would have been like, he's such a nice guy. What the heck's wrong with him?
So it wasn't that I'd be afraid of you as much as I'd probably look at you with pity.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. I wasn't afraid. When I was a kid, that was a way to protect myself because I was bigger and a little more athletic. And I was the youngest of four brothers. So I got my you-know-what kick a lot. And I learned, and I just, and that was a mask of mine. Right. Puffed out chest, big arms, all that stuff was my mask. So people would just leave me alone. Don't mess with Timmy. He's an angry kid,
Okay.
So I came off as an angry kid. And, I got suspended out of my high schools. My father had to put me in private schools. And, then he had to up it a couple notches and send me to Connecticut to a private boarding school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but I just, it was my way of reaching out, I didn't have anybody to talk to. Like when I was a kid, Scotty, at 11 years old, I'm already in a basement in Jersey smoking weed, doing bongs and everything.
Okay, so now we found the common factor. Don't go to freaking Jersey. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they say all you need is a coffee pot and two people you could have a meeting. In Narcotics Anonymous, they say all you need is one person from Jersey and you can have a meeting.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
It's the truth, right?
It really is. But, the bottom line is I had to change the way I felt.
Right.
And I always felt ostracized. I always felt different than the other kids because, I knew they didn't have to change themselves, because they were cool with how they felt,
Right.
I wasn't like those kids. They were different than me. They had something different than me.
But, so I guess the way you're describing it, and this might be helpful to a lot of people, especially with kids that feel like they're being ousted or ostracized, I guess.
Yeah.
It wasn't that you were actually different. It was that you saw yourself differently. And they had confidence and you didn't. And
correct.
So it's not like you went in there and they says, oh, he's got a third eye in his forehead and he's different than us. You already felt that way. So the separation started before you'd even meet people, right?
100%. Yeah. It was like I was programmed already to be something I wasn't.
Wow.
And then, there was a big age difference in my family. Like my oldest brother had almost 10 years on me.
Okay.
So like when you're 10 years old and he's 20, all jacked up with a beard, like that's a huge, that's just a huge difference. Time warp, 30 to 40, no big deal. 40 to 50, 50 to 60. It's not,
right.
It's not as intense or as influential as 10 to 20.
Right.
Those are just two different worlds, man. Like,
yeah.
So, you get picked on and you get, names and tags and blah, blah, blah.
And you took it all personal. You internalized all of that. So little jokes didn't run off your back.
No, because my father would come home and reinforce it.
Wow.
So I don't know about the people who are listening, but, I've been very active in my recovery. And, a lot of people that I work with, I always ask them, raise your hands. How many of you went like that when your father came home? At the majority. And then, of course, that was adding the fuel. And then I'm hearing the stuff from my brothers, 4 of them. And my dad comes home and all my mother does is try to make believe nothing's happening. It's okay, honey. Dad had a bad day. And, well, if Dad had a bad day, why couldn't he just say, hey, Tim, you know what? You can hang out with me, but I don't feel like talking right now. I had a bad day. Okay. I would have done anything just for that.
So you weren't, we're not talking about like, a lot of people think that growing up and having a problem with alcohol and drugs or any kind of even personality disorders and problems comes from a violent situation. But there's a lot of other kinds of things that happen in your youth. I hesitate to call it abuse because I don't think it was meant to be abusive, but you took it as abusive. So, or you took it as a slight on you somehow. So there's a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people feel that.
I'm a kid. Like I can't have a conversation like we're having right now.
Right.
I'm not fully developed. I'm immature. My mind is not fully developed. And, you're wanting this love or this attention or emotional security from people that are supposed to be there for you the most, right? Your parents, because that's what all the books say.
Yeah.
And if all the books aren't saying that, leave it to Bieber saying it.
Yeah.
And then, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, here I am. Oh, what the heck's going on? I just got my ass kicked out in the backyard from 4 of my brothers. There was a couple boys across the street. Like, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and then my mom's just like, oh, it's okay. Don't know what the heck is going on here. So like,
so I'm going to assume you didn't really have an understanding of anything other than I don't belong.
Yeah, I always thought I had to say what I think people wanted to hear.
Wow.
Instead of what I wanted to say, because every time I wanted to say something or I felt over the years of programming, I just felt like, well, what the hell I said didn't really matter anyway, and just Tim.
Well, all of us go through stages.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've been writing a paper on, which is, your identity stages. And your first identity is whatever your parents tell you are, you are.
Yeah.
And then your second stage is when you start socializing in school. Whatever school tells you, you are in combination with what your parents tell you. There's no room for your own interpretation. Then you become a teenager moving into later teenage where you start to become independent.
Yeah.
But now it's really about your peers are now telling you who you're supposed to be and so your identity faces with the peers.
Yeah.
And then you get into your 20s and I've got to go to college. I've got to work. I've got to do these things. So you start like, okay, what do I have to be for work? What do I have to be in college? And there's all these things. And it goes all the way up into the 30s when it's like, now I've got to be a professional. I cannot be the 28-year-old goof talking about the Lakers all the time. I got to go in and talk about business. So you got to be a business person. And what I find is it comes around all the way until you get somewhere in your 40s and late 40s when one day you wake up and say, when do I start being who I am? Does that track for you, that kind of journey? Or for most people, isn't that kind of what they go through?
Yeah, because like I think a lot of us, especially if we're screwing up or you have the addiction gene or the genetic component or the makeup, or you have all those recipes, those dysfunctional ingredients to the recipe. I mean, I said it 1,000 times. What's wrong with me?
Wow.
What's wrong with me? Like, am I ever going to get this? My mother made me, I had to be a banker. So, I'm at 17 years old, I'm already part-time in a bank. Then I had to be a CPA. Everything was with wealth with them or status with them. And my father was a doctor in Manhattan. Wow. And I was forced into it. I that's my take of it, because he was one of 8. I'm first generation here. He was an Italian. My mother was from England. And he, back in the day, he was the one that got chosen to be the kid who's going to get the education out of the family. They sent him back 8 years old because back in his day, his parents fled Italy, with Hitler and Mussolini and all that. A lot of Italians were going to England and London area. 8 years old, they send their son back. 8 years old. Like, talk about abandonment. My father was pissed. When we were growing up, he was angry.
And a lot of that carried over.
100 pissed.
Jeez.
Like, imagine that, 8 years old, going back to another country in a really hostile environment because the war was still going. And then, I'm a Catholic. I'll never be a Catholic bastard. My experience was wonderful in the church, but I also have to think with a dose of reality at the same time for me, because how do I know? Because my father, all his education was through the Catholic school system back in the day. So could he have possibly got sexually abused? Possibly. I'm not going to rule that out. And like I said, no disrespect. I love my church, but I also have to have an adult conversation, right?
Well, at the end of the day, no matter what you believe about your church, it's human beings.
Correct.
And some are sick and some aren't. And it's going to happen.
Correct. Could he have gotten, not beaten, but could he have been disciplined through a stick? Yeah.
There's a million things.
There's so many things, but I had to start talking about what I didn't want to talk about. Some of that was the stuff I didn't want to talk about because he was, an angry guy. And obviously, whether it was the abandonment issue, the upbringing issue, the education issue, did he want to be a doctor? I think my father learned how to fall in love with it because he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, he was just phenomenal. Everybody called Dr. Roberto. And he was a wonderful man. In that respect, he was phenomenal.
But like every other human being, he has struggles.
100%. Yeah.
So all of these things you care. By the way, because you mentioned the church, we did just hear this morning that the Pope has passed.
Yeah.
And certainly, that can be very traumatic for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
And so we just certainly tip our hats and to the good work that Pope Francis did about inclusion and not putting other people down and acceptance of others and all the work he did, which was beyond most other popes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. He did good work.
Yeah.
He did good work.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's going to be next. I'm still waiting for them to get a pope from Jersey. We got closer with Brazil this time, but Jersey would be the one.
Yeah,
that'd be the one. Pope Guido,
and he would also be eating Taylor ham and egg, not pork roll.
That's right.
The Pope. If the Pope calls it Taylor ham and egg, it's Taylor ham and egg, my friends, not pork roll.
So you went into your life and you struggled with your alcoholism and stuff like that. And, and certainly those probably there's some result because of the stuff you went through as a child. You carried
100%,
all of that. And you were down and we've all been down. But I think what I really want to know is what was the moment that changed so that you knew you could get better? Because a lot of people, they want to get better, but they just don't believe they can. Do you remember the thing that changed in you that said, oh my God, I can have a better life? Do you remember that?
I do. I remember it specifically. I get that asked a lot, especially, the more years I start collecting, in sobriety, because it's like a milestone right now, 18 years. Not many people make that. So, I get it asked a lot. What do you think it was? I said, well, I'll tell you exactly what it was. My pain outgrew my fear.
Wow.
I was broken, man. I didn't like how I felt even before I started using. So, here I am at a center. A guy that I was in the Marine Corps with actually got me into in Deerfield Beach, scholarship. You know, I was living in a truck in Deerfield Beach. I'm from Jersey. And yeah, it was my pain outgrew my fear. So people who walked before me, you know, I just had to start learning the discipline of doing what I didn't want to do.
What was the fear, though? What was the fear that
Living
kinda
life on life's
that
terms.
kept you in your pain?
Living life on life's terms.
Like the fact that you wouldn't be able to do it, or that
Uh,
you didn't deserve it? I mean, was there any of that
I
in
think a
there?
little all of that mixed
Okay.
together,
All right.
you know, just life would overwhelm me.
Okay.
And that kept me in a very fear-based space, you know,
Right.
like just fear. And then as long as I was in a fear-based mode environment, then that means I was creating fear-based decisions. If I'm creating fear-based decisions, overall, all I kept doing was creating more fear.
And not having the confidence, you know,
Well, I didn't like how
carrying over that I can't kind of thing, or I'm not worthy kind of thing from your childhood.
yeah.
So there's no confidence to face anything, right?
Well, now I'm 44. You know, I destroyed this woman who I was married to. I destroyed her life. I had 2 kids that I destroyed their lives, all because I didn't like how I felt.
Yeah.
You know, and I was in and out of the rooms most of my life, and I heard guys like you walk before me, guys who walked after me. Even it doesn't really take. It's not rocket science. Actually, it's so simple. It's elusive.
Yeah.
But I would hear guys, you know, I used to get so pissed when somebody would say, "You're selfish. You're selfish. You know what?" Boy, when I heard that in the room, man, I would always, because my wife used to say that to me.
Yeah.
And I used to pop my top.
And that's not what you wanted to be, was it?
No.
In your head, what did you want to be?
I just wanted to be a contributor to life, you
And
know,
a good dad, and
a
do
good
all those things
Yeah.
that you didn't get, you wanted to give to your kids, and do all of those things, right?
And I could until I got high.
Right.
Like my kids were devastated. I don't know any other way to put it. They were really devastated. You know, they were very, very little, but you know, when they're devastated and you have a guy struggling with addiction that's devastated, you know, they might just remove themselves or become quieter or just kind of go in a corner. You know, I just got higher and higher because the pain of feeling that, of what I did to people that didn't even deserve to be treated like that, you know.
So you're feeling, because you're seeing what they're going through, and then it's also probably reminding you of how you felt, and which makes it even worse, right?
Yeah, it's like the family, you know, breaking the cycle.
Yeah,
you know, that cycle. Like my father, you know, I hated my father, and that's just strong language. But I have to be honest to people who are listening, because if I'm not honest, then I might not reach that one person that needed to hear it today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just very honest today, you know, respectfully. And I did. I hated my dad, but you know, when I'm consumed with resentments and angers, irritabilities, fears, addiction, mental health conditions, you know, I just can't get to where I need to be in order to see it another way at that time.
At that time.
And, you know, I hated him, but you know, today I learned how to love my father, because I always wanted to be understood. Nobody understands me, you mother. If you had my fucking problem, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that just outmaneuvered me, that type of mentality. So today in recovery, I taught myself, and now I can teach others. I taught myself how to understand rather than be understood. Because good luck with that, man. Trying to have some, you know what I mean?
But there's 2 things you had to do that.
I
mean, one is obviously, you know, learn.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
get some information
Correct.
and start to understand about mental health,
Correct.
about self-awareness, about those things. But then you also had to take a look at you, because if you couldn't do that, you would never see what other people were going through.
100%.
How hard was that for you to take that journey inward? Once you were sober and you said, now I'm going to figure this out. I don't think people understand the difficulty in digging into yourself.
Yeah. Initially, it was tough.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of this stuff would bring up a lot of intense feelings. And, you know, my whole life, even since a little kid, I would act out a little bit. But by 11, I'm smoking weed. So I've always turned to a substance. I've always turned to that, you know, or something else. And initially, I couldn't turn to anything else. But for me, my experience with that was very short-lived. I started experiencing what I always wanted to experience. And that was a natural...
So you were able to absorb the little victories and say, "Wow,
Real
isn't bad."
out of the gate.
Wow, that's
pretty quickly.
That's actually rare. A lot of people have struggled with that because all they do is focus on the difficulty and not on the reward.
Yeah.
You were able to grab the reward.
Yeah, I just stopped going to Home Depot for ice cream.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And I just gathered.
Explain what you mean by that, because I get it, but other people might not.
Well, I love ice cream, right? I got a sweet tooth, and I kept going to Home Depot for it and never could find it. So I would walk out of Home Depot like, this place sucks. And I walk through the park and take my bowl and go home. But when I took my bowl and go home, I drank.
So in essence, looking for answers in all the wrong places.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, which actually, bottom of the bottle and a pill or a needle, all those things that we look for. Or even in the wrong group of people. We commiserate with people who are miserable like us. We don't get together with happy people.
No, because we attract what we know.
Yes.
I've never met a drunk that wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I want to feel like happy today. Let me go to the bar and hang out with some people that are already 12 drinks in.
So did you know when you got sober you were going to help people? Because your track, you were in the Marines, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And then all the other stuff. But did you know when you got sober, how long before you realized I need to do this? Help people.
Yeah, it was. So this guy, I was already through my step work, and he came up to me and said he had a prison commitment. And he said, I said, absolutely. He said, I just want to tell you one thing. I'm like, okay. He's like, if there's nothing you have, if there's anything you have outstanding, you're not getting back out. I want to help. Yeah, okay. But there was a thing I had still out there, even through all that step work and all the making him.
Yeah.
I had a charge. I had a seizure in Clearwater. I had all kinds of stuff in the car, blah, blah, blah. And I never got charged officially.
But it was still kind of looming.
Yeah, right? And I wasn't going to call them up. Oh, hey, I'm in this. I'm in this process now. My name's Tim. You remember me? You gave me all those tickets. So I didn't call them. So I thought, wow, what a great way to do it. If I don't make it back out, then I gotta clear this up. It was the only thing. Honest to gosh, the only thing I had left. So he said, okay. I said, yeah, I'm good. He said, all right. So I'm speaking in the jail, and all of a sudden it just, these moments, you have these moments that until you experience them, they're very elusive. But it's through the experience for me where I got stronger and stronger, So I was telling the guys in the jail, look, I might not make it out of here. I told him what I said. I might not make it out of here, but the only difference is you got caught and I didn't. But if I don't make it out of here, there's no other place I'd rather be except my own kind. And he's looking at me. I could feel the look. He's looking at me like, what are you doing? So I made it out. Like a wise guy went, well, I guess I don't have anything.
I'm just imagining this phone call. Yeah, it's me, Tim. If you're still looking for me, I've already put myself behind bars to make it easy.
Yeah. And I was living in halfway.
I think by the time they get done laughing, you would have left and gone home anyway.
Yeah.
Who would do that?
But yeah. And he says to me, what the heck were you doing in there? I said, Artie, I just needed to do it, man. I was hoping it was going to be, I wouldn't then I had to do it. And then, a couple of nights later, it's like 4:30 in the morning. I hear all this rustling outside. I was living in halfway. I was a little old habit, I peek out the window.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they, it's 4:30 in the morning. Like, they don't send nothing against the little guys, but they send these big, huge dudes out, like warrant serving. And there's my roommate on the porch. I open up the door, put my recovery cape on, my Superman cape. Charlie, you all right, man? You need anything, bro? And he looks around at me. He says, and I knew the look because he looked around. I said, nah, Timmy, I'm all right. Wow. And I went, and the guy's like, Tim, what's your name? I said, Tim Roberto. He said, get out of here and sit Indian style. Click, click. But, so I went into 44. I'm 45 now, a year of sobriety under my belt. Yeah. In my 45th year, it was the first time ever when I got into the police car and they closed the door. I went,
because, yeah,
I knew this was the last.
You're closing a chapter.
Correct. That was the very last thing I had to do.
Wow.
So I was forced, thank you, God, doing for me what I couldn't do for myself.
All right.
Because I don't think, I think he'll do what we can't do for us, but he won't do what we can do for us. And in that moment, I couldn't call. Hey, hey, it's Tim Roberto.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it, so I was pushed it, and it was just incredible. So,
but you put yourself out there for that,
correct.
You wanted it to end. You just, I love the way it worked out.
It's phenomenal.
So, how does that translate to you saying, "I'm going to help others"?
Because that I got locked up, I got incarcerated, and the people that came to get me out were the people that were there from day one. And that was a very huge moment, like not only is it my duty to take guys under my wing and sponsor them and bring them through a process like men in recovery do. It's my turn to start giving back, so
you start doing that, and then you is that the point when you said I got to go after my degrees and get therapy?
Went back to school, and I really got it. I love the space, and I love group facilitating. Boy, do I love group facilitating.
I do too.
It's magical.
Yes,
because I can use the power of the group to influence people that are still like most people, like me, very protective. I ain't saying shit. Everything's good and fine, and that was the stuff that made me crumble and spiral my whole life. How you doing? Good and fine. Wow. But I learned that as a kid, how to lie. I did, because kids are honest.
Right.
Until they start getting shot down for their honesty, or what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you always gonna ask questions? Or I'll give you something to cry about, or whatever the case may be. And then that one day comes, I don't know, your dad, an adult, whatever. Hey, how you doing? Well, okay. If I tell them the truth, I either get picked apart or whatever. What do I want? And then I was like, good. And in that moment, man, it was like that. I had that, even though it was like a 10th of a second, I had that, hey, good job, great. And then boom, the stuff started coming right back again. Gee, I thought you were gonna be a dummy your whole life. I thought you would never stop asking questions. But in that moment, I learned how to lie. I've been saying good and fine my entire life.
Wow. So before we move on, because I want to talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah.
I just want to wrap this up.
Yeah.
The struggles with your brother, your father, the people of your past. Were you able to reconcile all that in recovery?
Yes. And
with them, the relationships with them, you were able to rebuild and improve those without the resentments and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I travel a lot for Beachway Therapy Center. We have a place in West Palm and Jersey, and that was another part of the deal when I came to them full time. Because this is crazy. If you would have told me this 18 years ago, you're nuts. Why would they be lying like that? But the person, one of the leaders at Beachway, the COO, she said, "Don't your kids live in Lawrenceville?" So, and Beachway has a place in Lawrenceville. So so
you get to go up there.
And yes, with the amends process, they understand me because I got honest with them. What I did was wrong. What can I do to make it right? I don't know a better way to make an amends than that, and just listen to the instruction. And they just said, "Dad, we always just wanted you around." And for me, that was the instruction. And I just made sure I kept honoring that through recovery, and through disciplines that I've learned over the years, and honesty, etc. So, yes, it's good. I go there and they invite me to their homes, and the wife's purses are out, and my kids have money, I'm there to enjoy a dinner with them, or I sleep there, or it's just incredible.
And they no longer see a wrecking ball coming through the door. They see Dad.
No, they actually asked me for my advice today.
Wow.
Which that was unheard of, even initially 18 years ago, because they're 33 and 30 now. So even 18 years, none of that.
Grandkids yet?
I do. I have a daughter that has a 2-year-old. She's pregnant now, due in June. So
you're a grandpa.
Yeah, I'm a grandpa.
I'm
listen, about to play Santa Claus this year.
I got 2 grandkids. I cover the beard with coloring.
I would have never known. It looks phenomenal. Very natural.
Yeah, it's very natural.
Are you serious?
No, because
you do.
My problem is it turns all gray and then gray a little bit here, and then there's spots that are darker. So I look like Lon Chaney halfway through the change into the Wolfman.
By the way, he just dated himself, Lon Chaney. How
Yeah,
far back that goes? Was that guy was in the 30s?
I say Wolfman. Everybody here's like, oh, with Benicio del Toro. I'm like, no, Lon Chaney. Wow, you remember those as kids?
Yeah, they were great.
The Saturday morning monster movies and the Saturday afternoon monster movies.
Yeah, but both
TV.
those guys did remember they would do those guest star appearances on Abbott and Costello.
Yeah. Oh
my!
Abbott and Costello meet the werewolf.
Yeah.
Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh, the best.
Oh
gosh.
We're really dating ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we had 3 channels to watch. That was it.
Yeah.
Unless you counted PBS, which we didn't, because nobody wanted to watch that.
Yep.
That's what your parents made you watch when you were little.
And if you think about it, that's all you needed back then.
Yeah,
it was quality, good stuff, like good stuff.
Because we had this thing that happened when we were kids. If the sun was shining, our parents would come in the room and say, "What are you doing in the house? Get outside. Don't come back until the sun goes down.
Get out and play."
And you go out, and there was no cell phones.
No.
You know what my dad had? My dad had what we call a yell phone. He'd go out in the porch and yell our names. And you better be in signal service area. You better know. If you're not receiving the yell phone, other stuff happens. But yeah, it was different when we were kids.
Yep.
But again, I'm so excited about you now. For the past 4 years, have been doing something called Stomping Out the Stigma.
Yep.
And we were together on some of that at the beginning.
Yep.
Tell us about and you just had another successful Stomping Out the Stigma event.
Yep.
What is Stomping Out the Stigma? What is it?
Yeah. Well, it was born in brokenness,
mm-hmm.
you know, and the philosophy is it's a space for veterans and first responders to get well. There's no diagnosing, there's no invoicing, there's no reporting to agencies, no insurance, nothing. The only thing I need is first name, and I do the rest. I work very hard during the year to raise money. It started in my 15th year of sobriety. Scott and Karen were there for 2 years.
And you helped us tremendously, and we appreciate what you did for us. And now it's nice because now we can write a check to you.
That was incredible.
And this is what we do, right? We support each other.
100%.
Yeah.
So, because, Palm Beach County, Florida, has the highest suicide rate out of any other county in Florida, and there's 67 of them. For amongst first responders.
Yeah.
So as a first responder who lost his ability to communicate, struggling with his mental health and addiction, I was good and fine too, but inside I was crumbling, and it shortened my career in the Marine Corps, and that was one of my first devastating losses in my life. I loved the Marine Corps. I absolutely, I still get that lump, man. I loved the Marine Corps. There was just something so special about it. And I think for me, feeling the way I felt, the thing I loved was the camaraderie.
Yeah.
The brotherhood, man, the sister. There wasn't, I'm 63 in August, so didn't have any sister Marines then, but there's more now, yes. But even if I wasn't involved or in service with her, meeting them today, always, it's a Semper Fi thing, always faithful.
Yeah.
Whether it's female or male. So and it just keeps growing, and it keeps in that growth. It keeps convicting me that there's a need, and I've helped. This year has been my greatest year. I've helped quite a few veterans and quite a few first responders, and I've helped them as far away as New Jersey. I actually read a letter. We had a big function for the 4th annual walk. I walked 15 miles a few days last week on Tuesday the 15th, and I actually read a letter that a first responder in New Jersey sent me, thanking Stomping Out the Stigma, because I have a lot of relationships. I'm in the space for a long time now, and I know some phenomenal therapists. And we just work out a price. I work out a price with them, and when somebody calls in, I just a mini assessment kind of gather who will fit right. But one of my requirements is that you have to, if you're not culturally competent, you have to be certified trauma.
Right.
You have to be a certified trauma therapist.
Culturally competent, which means you've got background working in
Correct.
or as a first responder.
As a first responder, you have background. Dad
Yeah.
was, mom was.
Because that's a problem for a lot of first responders. Let's talk about firefighters possibly.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know, more firefighters die every year by suicide
Yep.
than die in the line of duty.
Correct.
And you think it's dangerous running into a burning building. What's more dangerous is pulling a body out of a burning building and then going home and sitting by yourself. That's even more dangerous.
Yeah.
There's things that they deal with we
Yep.
can't possibly imagine. Now,
Yep.
here's the problem. We've got therapists who
Yep.
might be well-intentioned, and I'm glad you brought this up. They might be well-intentioned, but they're they have so little experience in the first responder world
Yep.
that they, like everyone else, gets caught up in the story, but not in what happens to the person. So tell me more about the burning and what were the fire like,
Yeah.
and where was instead of saying, what did that do to you? They don't need all the details of the story. They need the details of what the person was feeling.
Correct.
And you have to be
Correct.
able to get past the story. People without experience can't. We want to know.
Yep.
Yep. Did somebody shoot at you? Did
Yeah.
this happen? Did this happen?
Yeah, you don't ask any of that stuff. Yeah.
No, they're going to tell you what they tell you. Then you've got to somehow figure out, how do I connect this to what's going on inside of him?
Correct.
If you stuck,
Correct.
and we see that a lot though. Therapists that are not qualified,
Correct.
going in trying to help first responders,
Yep.
and that can be dangerous, right?
I don't think it's the best approach.
No,
I think everybody has
good
worth.
intentions, but it's not good.
Correct. Everybody has worth.
Mhm.
But I think you should stay in your lane. There's mental health clinicians, there's substance abuse clinicians, there's family therapy clinicians, there's trauma clinicians, and then you have first responders where it's either you have to be culturally competent, you have to be certified in trauma,
Right.
and you also have to have peer involvement. That's huge, especially for peers who have struggled with their mental health or some type of substance abuse. I think it's critical, because like you were saying, you can't understand something you've never experienced.
Right.
Like I've never, even myself, and I was a Marine, but I never did a first fire rescue job. I never was a police officer. You know what I mean? I don't know how to do their job.
Yeah.
But my common denominator with them is I know what it's like to go from 0 to 100 over and over and over again.
Mhm.
That's the thing that gets 30 to 33% of first responders.
Right.
Is not only, of course, what they're seeing on a daily basis, but that 0 to 100 over, and that's my common denominator.
So you as a therapist, have there been times when you've gotten into something you said, I need to get somebody else in on this because
100%.
probably,
Yeah.
and that takes, you've got to put your pride aside and do what's best for your client.
Well, it's somebody's
That's so
life.
important. Yeah.
It's not mine. It's their due process, not mine. And who the hell am I to deny them of their due process, dude?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, no, cut that. Excuse me, cut that
Cut
shit out.
No.
Cut that shit out. Like, I'm not a trauma therapist.
Yeah.
I'm far from it.
So when you come up against that, you know what to do.
100%. Can I mentor you? 100%. Can I coach you? 100%. Can I take you back to where you don't want to go? 100%. There's a lot of things I can do because a lot of those things I've experienced.
Right.
But other than that,
But you know what? I'm going to say that you can help people with everything because it's either your direct help or your indirect help where you connect them.
correct.
You help everybody,
Correct.
but there's some people where your skills don't match.
I mean,
And we need more therapists that think that way and work together. And that's part of stomping out stigma too, is like, let's stop making this the thing where it's like, it's going to be all secret and secret squirrel stuff. It's like, listen, if you've got a brain injury and a broken leg, chances are you're going to two different doctors.
Yep.
Chances are.
Yep.
And nobody's saying, oh no, I don't want to do that. Let's keep it,
Yeah.
No, it's just a brain injury. So we need to just do that. Right.
if you're hurt in the line of duty, everything's cool.
Yeah.
We got your back, man. We got you. Take as much time as you need. But if I report and I'm not doing well, there's a good chance, say as a police officer, I'm not doing to take your gun away.
Yeah.
And to a police officer, if you don't wear a gun, if you're not a police officer, it's hard to stuff like that's hard to understand. But to a police officer, That's a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, so stomping out the stigma, the only thing I need is your first name. And that's the only thing I want. I don't, because without anonymity, without the confidentiality, without
sure.
just that, without treating it as a secret space,
Right.
Excuse me, sacred space,
Right.
it won't work because I'll just be like the other. You know, man, this is touchy.
No, I get it.
I'll be like the other EAP. Yeah.
No. Listen, we're learning.
Correct.
We're learning. You didn't know some of this stuff 20 years ago or 15 years ago or even 10 years ago, some of the stuff we weren't even talking about. But now we are.
Yeah.
And some people haven't caught up yet. It's not about, like I said, I think 90% of the people out there have the best of intentions.
100%.
But there are things that we need to start changing.
Correct.
We're not winning any battles here.
Correct.
Tim.
Does your
winning?
Correct. Does your occupation contribute or fuel it? Of course it does. You know, occupation, it plays a role in it. But I want to get rid of the labels all the time. It's a human condition.
Right.
Like this is a human condition. You know, it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're you know, you're scared. I don't know. It's a human condition. And we need to focus on the human condition. We need to focus on what certain people are doing over and over and over again. It's not very nice.
Absolutely. If you want to find out more about Stomping Out the Stigma, you can go to SOTSINC. So it's SOTS Inc. SOTSINC.org. Which SOTS, if you hadn't figured it out, Stomping Out the Stigma Inc.
Yep. 10 sessions. Guarantee you 10 sessions. Always free, never a fee.
Check out what's going on. If you can, they donate on the site too.
100%.
If you want to make a donation to help him stomp out the stigma and work with people and make sure people have an avenue to good mental health, no matter what's going on around them, they've got a safe avenue to get to good mental health.
Guaranteed.
And that's so important. But there's also your other life where you operate as a therapist with Beachway.
I do.
Now you spent many years with another place, and you and I were friends there, and there was good people there and stuff. But you really kind of went all in on Beachway about a year ago or whenever.
Yep.
What are you guys doing over there, and what's so exciting for you?
Well, man,
there's so much, I'm sure, but
yeah, just I guess to keep it simple, you know, it's an incredible resource. And the longevity of the program now is in its 17th year, and they're and they're very well known for their mental health program, their substance abuse program, their family program, and super well known for their trauma track, their trauma program. They have two full-time trauma therapists, and that's all they do. They don't do a caseload, nothing. And then, you know, if you're a primary in those other tracks that I was mentioning, the maximum caseload a therapist has is eight clients, but they're usually working at 6, and that's the proper way. That's the best care. That's the best point of care that you can actually give somebody, because a lot of facilities 10, 12, 15 people on their caseload, and it's bizarro. But you know, being around them for so long and knowing about them, and they're very focused on their treatment. After last year stomping out the stigma, when I walked 71 miles, and it created an incredible surge and change in the conversation that our brothers and our sisters, like Scott said, you know, there's more now that die nationally to suicide than in the line of duty every year for first responders. And you know, this walk that I was talking about last year, it changed my life. Like these guys, I had one guy said, "Can I ask you a personal question?" The guy's like, "Yeah." And I said, "What made you get so intimate with me?" And he's like, "Seriously?" And I'm like, "Oh, geez, I don't know. Did I screw up that moment?"
I'm not a set.
But he said, "Dude, you're a Marine. You're already like 30 something miles into this walk. You got 40 to go, and you're doing it for us." He's like, "Yeah, I trusted you, man." Wow. And I really needed to say that. And you gave me that space, because he hopped out of a truck as I was walking, and we just started shooting the, you know what? Wow. And next thing you know, boom, I was like, whoa. I had all these little signals. So after that, I came back to Beachway, and I said, "Look, I have to ask you this. This could be the thing. I've been trying to put this together for 10 years, Scott. 10. I've been after this for a really long time. Like nobody could get it going. And they didn't have time to hear it at that point, but a couple months, because I said to them, we have an incredible establishment here. We have so much stuff in place to help first responders. And they didn't have the time, but they came back a couple of months later and said, you know what, we're right. We believe in you and we see what you're doing. We're willing to back you.
Wow.
100%. I'm getting emotional because it's just so deep, man. And they're starting to show up.
That's fantastic.
And now we have first responders there as peers. And one of the guys was a guy I met on the walk down in Miami-Dade. They were phenomenal. And him and I have been friends ever since. I had no idea a year ago that that I'd be calling him, asking him one day, hey, I want to talk to you. And I really want to talk to you. They've given me an opportunity. Would you have a part in this?
Wow.
Way before my, blah, blah, blah. So this is all born pure. It's all organic. And I think that's what's making it so cool. And, we've given a scholarship or two out, Miami-Dade police, and it just keeps going. And now we have two peers assisting. Dude, I'm telling you, man, it's phenomenal. And when they said a year ago, hey, you could create a legacy here. I said, what do you mean? Like, I'm just Tim. We don't mean it like that. You could be the beginning. We could be the beginning of something, even if you do move on that, continues to thrive and live,
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I'm kind of glad it took a little time because
10
sometimes
years?
people rush into this stuff. Well, yeah, I know, but hey, back in the old days, I wasn't going to drink whiskey that was made yesterday. I wanted it to sit in a barrel for a while.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? So
I do.
with time, you were able to learn, and you were able to I want to get this thing going, and probably that one conversation was such a good launching point for you.
It was incredible,
and it was also the time to bring it up and to start doing that. And now you're building this. I gotta say, Beachway, just so you understand, Beachway Therapy, it's in West Palm. They also have a location up in New Jersey, as we talked about, near your daughters or your kids.
Yep.
They have detox through IOP. So they have the detox, the res, the PHP, the IOP, probably OP as well. All sorts of treatments. So the whole continuation, you don't have to keep shuffling people around.
Nope.
And also, since you're ACA, you deal with addictions and with mental health. Correct. Which is really good because what we're discovering more and more is that link between mental health and addictions cannot be overlooked anymore. No. It is such a strong link. Yep. And some people are primary to one or the other. Correct. And you can make that shift if it turns out that the insurance companies say, well, they're primary mental health and you're an addiction treatment center, so you got to move them. We're not paying. So you're able to do that. Correct. To say, okay, well, that's fine. Now that we discovered, because some people, this is difficult when you're dealing with mental health and addiction. Yeah. Diagnosing them before they go through detox and start getting better is nearly impossible, isn't it? You can figure some things out, but it's tough. But
the mental health is a whole different ballgame too, though, in itself, because a lot of our mental health clients, they don't even have any substance abuse.
Exactly.
And that's a whole nother animal, man. Like, it's intense. So.
Sometimes it's almost easier with the substance abuse because you got something to point at. You got something outside of themselves to fight. Correct. Right?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
We're going to deal with your mental health, but we're going to fight Jack Daniels. Gives you it's like Don Quixote, and you got your own windmills to chase, right? But with mental health, you're not looking at demons or monsters on the outside. Everything's on the inside. That makes it even more difficult in a sense, doesn't it?
And you need somebody who can specifically treat clinically a mental health patient that doesn't even touch substance abuse. Right. They're all mental health. Like a clinician, that's their lane. Like you have chiropractors, you got orthopedists, you got you got cardio. You need a mental health licensed clinician that doesn't even touch substance abuse. Mental health is his or her love, their path, their jam. They love working with mental health.
I think the numbers, and if I remember right, because I checked them, it was almost a year ago when I did this last look at these numbers, but 80% of people with addictions, alcoholism and addictions, have a co-occurring mental health disorder. 80%, but people with a mental health disorder, only 30% of those have a co-occurring addiction disorder.
Correct.
So I mean, there's 30% is still a huge number. And there's a lot of people just struggling with just the mental health.
And that 30%, I wonder how much of that percent are hardcore chronic, or they just use them because they can't stand how they feel.
It could just be self-medication without I mean, I'm not loving to get high or drunk. I'm just doing it because I can't sleep unless I take something. I can't stop my heart from racing unless I. So there's a lot going on there. And you got this team of people, I mean, to deal with the mental health addictions and you know, if that's not enough, you guys aren't doing enough. You're now helping first responders, and you got a family therapy program. What are these people like that you've now joined up with? Is this like dream team area we're talking about here?
There was somebody 10 years ago, like I told you, I started 10 years ago with this, a person in uniform to a little place I was working at. And you know, it just never panned out. And I tell him today, because he's starting to get a little involved, because he's a big mental health advocate for first responders. And I said, can you believe this, man? This is 10 years in the making. But Beachway is special. Like the clinical director, she's been there over 10 years. The program director, Brian, who oversees all the clinicians, has been there over 10 years. There's even our chef, because there's a restaurant on the property. He's been there over 8 years. Like clinically, there's nobody less than I think about 4 years now. The longevity of the employees, the mentality of the owners, they're still on property every day. Like they don't have to be.
See, this might be why when you say Beachcomber or not Beachcomber, sorry, Beachway. Beachway Therapy has been around for 17 years. I kind of was taken back because I haven't seen their name in the papers, and
you won't either,
and because there hasn't been that kind of controversy, which seems to go along with almost every place out there. At one point, they've all gone through the ringer in the last 10 years somehow, or even 15 years. But this place has just been doing it right from the beginning.
They keep growing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they've never had Beachways. I'm telling you. Everybody that comes, especially with me being on board now, because they never had any community relations, they never had, any business development people, any advocates, any voice out there. Never. It's all internal. It's all in house, word of mouth. So when I came on board, and I still get them, oh my God, Beachway, I passed out. I always wonder what that place is like.
Yeah,
come on it, and people are just blown away.
So if you go to beachway.com, very simple, beachway.com, you can learn more about the place. They can call and ask questions, right? I mean, it's the kind of place.
Yeah, you can call, you can get in touch with me. I'm all over social. Tim Roberto, you can find me easy peasy. Whatever you want, whatever you need. This is a total gift I feel I've been a recipient of. Like I have something at my disposal that can really help people, can really make a difference in somebody's life, and to keep it, just to improve the quality of somebody's life who's struggling just like I was. That's the gift. I just keep paying it forward. I believe for me, it's, God's given me an incredible opportunity to really make a difference. I feel it's like my last push. I'm not being morbid. I'm just a reality. I'm in the fourth quarter. I'll be 63. My clock is I'm not in the first quarter anymore. And what a phenomenal way to wrap it up, make this one last push, because it's hard, man. You've been around the scene for a long time. This is a very difficult space. There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of strife. There's a lot of loss. There's a lot of pain, a lot of fear, a lot of trauma, it's just so much in this mental health addiction for responder space. To be partaking in it, I think it's very special. It's very unique. Like if it wasn't special and unique, I don't think we would have the serious problem that we have today. Everything would be all, smelling like rose, but we got a serious situation today. You know, our communities have a huge mental health issue today, a homelessness condition, a drug addiction, first response. Like it's really
There's so much. And we took a dive during COVID. We took a dive. Mental health,
crap.
Suicidal ideations, addictions,
Oh,
everything,
my God.
homelessness, all that stuff. Big time. I don't know if anybody's looked at the numbers. It's not like when COVID was over, we went backwards and we stayed at those elevated numbers.
Yeah.
It didn't start getting better. There might be a few pockets in smaller towns that maybe did better. Our major cities, not so much. And overall, the numbers are not good. I mean, this is a mission we'll never be done with. I'm proud of the work you do, and I feel good about the work that I do, and I think that's good.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that alone, I'm making a difference to maybe one or two people, on occasion. But we need so many more people working on this and helping and understanding, getting rid of the stigma, doing those things. Because if we're going to move that needle, and when I say move the needle, I mean get it out of their arms. If we're going to do that, we need everybody involved and stop hiding and pretending it's not happening.
You know, the last thing I'll say, I guess, is there was an icon in Broward, Bill, first responder, Bill G.
Yeah.
Bill G. And I mean an icon for 40 plus, like in every fire rescue magazine, every training, he moved the needle in ways that are going to go on for years. I mean, an idol.
Yeah.
That is not here with us anymore because, he died by death by suicide, and it just blew away the first responder community. And this is what I'm getting at, man. Look, they're very brave people. I mean, come on. They run towards when everybody else is running. It's not that they're not brave. It's what they're doing. And it's a human condition that we need to start talking about. We need to start helping people with that. They're all heroes. They truly are.
The scars on the outside are worn like a badge, but the scars on the inside are worn like an anchor.
And that's the human condition.
It is, yeah.
The human condition, man.
Yeah. And we're dealing with that, and we need your help. We need you to get involved.
Yeah, please.
If you want to help out with Stomping Out Stigma, once again, SOTSinc.org. Listen, if you could show up and help, if you could, even if you got someone else to help who's not part of my organization or Tim's organization, you could help somebody else. Go do it. Our war is not on drugs. Our war is not on mental health. Our war is on apathy. That we will step over somebody in the gutter so we can get a good seat at church on Sunday morning. We've got to change that. If we can get rid of the apathy and start really caring about people, we won't be seeing these mass shootings. We won't be seeing these people with suicide or first responders needlessly dying alone. And a lot of these first responders, it happens after they're done with their service, because they have not got anything in place to help them with that mental health. There's so many things we need to do. And of course, walk down any street in America and you're going to find somebody struggling with addictions, mental health, or something else. So let's all get involved. Go to SOTSinc.org and, donate a few dollars. If you want to go to One Brother, One Sister, you can help out that way. If you want to donate to both, we love you, and it's fine. We're going to love you anyway. I'm just going to use that as blackmail. If you want my love, you'll donate. If you don't, then but Tim, any final words for our people out there who is saying, can I make a difference?
I hope I reached somebody. Yes, if you wanted to contact me, you can contact me through SOTSinc.org. You can contact me through social media. Should I give my number?
Yes, go ahead.
Or you can call me at 561-876-8637, and I'll tell you what I do and how I do it and where, where the money goes or whatever. Yeah.
That's it. SOTSinc.org or go to beachway.com. Find out about the treatment center. For Tim Roberto, I'm Scott Jones. Thanking you for joining us. We'll catch you next time right here on the Sober Life Podcast.